Hi, my name's Lynn, and this is my YouTube channel. I've done videos in the past, and it just really didn't work out for me, and I decided to delete them and not put them out in the public arena. But lately I've felt the need to share some things that are near and dear to me, and I hope that they will help other people. I'm going to do a couple of disclaimers first. Number one, I have a little Shih Tzu dog that likes to snore very loudly. I've had to take him out of the room and put him into the bedroom. And my wife is sitting here next to me, and we discovered that he can even be heard in the other bedroom in here. So if you hear a dog snore, my apologies. I'm thinking of sending him to San Francisco so that they can use him as a foghorn. Also, I wanted to add that I am not a clinical psychologist. I'm not a board certified therapist of any type. I'm just like most of you. I've tried to make sense out of this life and its struggles, and I hope that I have a few things to add to make your lives a little bit better. And the subject of this video is out of the book The Road Less Traveled. It was written by M Scott Pecks, and I believe that was in the late 70s. And I'm just going to delve into the first chapter. So here we go. The first chapter is called Problems and Pain. And it starts out with life is difficult, and goes on to add that this is a great truth and one of the greatest truths. And there is an asterisk, and at the bottom it says the first of the four noble truths which Buddha taught was life is suffering. And Buddhism is definitely a world religion that is worth exploring, and I have done so, and I've gotten so much out of it. I've also enjoyed studying Christianity and Hinduism and various other traditions. And M Scott Pecks here will reference Carl Jung. And I wanted to express that Carl Jung has also been somebody that I've embraced and read over a lifetime, and I've come to understand that his genius was the ability to look at various religions and academics and even politics. Let's be honest, politics, we have to grapple with that too, all of us. And Carl Jung had the ability to dip into various traditions and various points of view and basically derive the alchemical gold out of everything that he explored, and discard the dross and save the rest of us a lot of work. But I will say it is a lot of work to read about Carl Jung. This particular book, The Road Less Traveled, is M Scott Pecks. He is a clinical psychiatrist, which means medical doctor and psychologist. And so he's blending a window of psychiatry along with the window of religion and spirituality, or at least ethics, too. And it's wonderful when you can take various viewpoints and put them together and get a larger view and help yourself in your life. Life is difficult. This is the great truth, one of the greatest truths. Life is a series of problems. Do we want to moan about them, or do we want to solve them? This is a great truth because once we truly see this truth, we can transcend it. Once we truly know that life is difficult, once we truly understand and accept it, then life is no longer difficult, because once it is accepted, the fact that life is difficult no longer matters. But most of us don't fully see this truth that life is difficult. Instead, they moan moan more or less incessantly, noisily, or subtly about the enormity of their problems, their burdens, and their difficulties, as if life were supposed to be generally easy. There's the dog over there. He's letting me know he's still wanting loves. But I'm going to call Scott Pecks Scotty just to abbreviate things and move along. But he goes on to say that discipline is the basic set of tools that we require to solve life's problems. And I will add this, when I was about 16 years old, I believe, if my memory serves, that my mother was cleaning out an apartment that her father owned, my grandfather. And the tenant must have been a spiritual seeker. And he had left behind a box of books as he moved out. And so my mother brought the books home. And that may or may have not been a big mistake. I don't know. My mother wanted me to grow up in a organized religion, and probably partly because of that box of books, I didn't. I went off on another path. But that's another story for another YouTube video, possibly. In that box of books was The Road Less Traveled by M Scott Pecks. I read that like a fish taken to water, and it has been such a blessing in my life. And learning about discipline as a young lad, I didn't want to listen to mom and dad. I was a rebellious young kid, and this serendipitously came to me, and it has really helped me in my life through all the twists and turns. Okay, what makes life difficult is that the process of confronting problems is a painful one. I'm sure that we can all get behind that. Problems, depending upon their nature, invoke in us frustration or grief, or sadness, or loneliness, or guilt, or regret, or anger, or fear, or anxiety, or anguish, or despair. These are uncomfortable feelings, to say the least, right? Yet it is in this whole process of meeting and solving problems that gives life its meaning. And isn't that also the truth? And when looked upon that way, if you got to suffer, you got to feel bad, at least you can derive some gold out of that by saying, hey, but I'm learning some lessons here. This can possibly bring out the good in me. And then he goes on to say, problems call forth our courage and our wisdom. Indeed, they create our courage and wisdom. And I will add to that at my age, it's very important for me to go to the gym and take care of myself and try to maintain a quality of life at my age. And all throughout my life, I've gone to the gym, and I've had other periods I haven't done so good, kind of been a party animal too, to be honest with you. That's another long story. I'll just say I had a weightlifting coach around the same time period that I found The Road Less Traveled in high school. And he has been a huge influence on me throughout a lifetime. He took the time to take a young person and give them an example of what being a man could possibly be. And one of those things was taking care of your body and improving yourself. And on and off throughout a lifetime, I've lifted weights and gone to the gym and done cardio. And my point is simply this, that the challenge of moving against gravity and lifting weights has a tendency to build muscle and to build strength, and to get on a bicycle or a jump rope and to improve your heart condition and your cardio health is obviously a good thing, but we are pushing against resistance. We're pushing against gravity, and we're also pushing against our own lack of discipline. Moving on. Most of us are not so wise about confronting our problems and using the tools of discipline. And he goes on to say that the tendency to avoid problems and the emotional suffering inherent in them is the primary basis of all mental illness. And that was really a revelation for me when I was a young lad. It still is. Since most of us have the tendency to a greater or lesser degree, most of us are mentally ill to a greater or lesser degree. And, please don't take that as a terrible label. Oh, boy, we're all mentally ill. Taking that in context, that means that we could have more stability emotionally and mentally if we could just practice some tools. Some of us will go to quite extraordinary lengths to avoid our problems and the suffering they cause, proceeding far afield from all that is clearly good and sensible in order to try and find an easy way out, building the most elaborate fantasies in which to live, sometimes to the total exclusion of reality. Well, if you watch YouTube videos and you've probably encountered the law of attraction, LOA videos, or maybe you've encountered abundance Christianity, claim it, name it, and you're going to have everything you want, I can see that as a partial truth. Obviously a good attitude probably will get you a better result. But in my childhood, my religion that I learned from basically put it this way: faith without works is dead. So believing something good is going to happen without putting some actual physical effort into it would probably fall under the category of fantasy. But hey, I've had some friends, they believe that Source provides all things and they become TikTok gurus. I've had a friend like that, and they have 10,000 followers, but I'm just afraid that, like Icarus, they eventually will crash and burn. I have to be careful with friends like that because I don't want to get drawn into their vortex. That's just a side note. Proceeding far afield from all that is clearly good and sensible in order to try to find an easy way out. In the succinctly elegant words of Carl Jung, neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. But the substitute itself ultimately becomes more painful than the legitimate suffering it was designed to avoid. So we've just encountered a fancy word, a psychiatric or psychological term. It's called neurosis. I like that word. It just helps me to keep it simple. But essentially what it means is that legitimate suffering looks something like this. I need to make money to pay my rent or my house payment. I need to put food on my table. I would enjoy maybe doing some things with some friends or my wife, and that requires money in our modern day society. And man, I wake up in the morning and I'm in that nice, cozy, warm bed with this fluffy pillow. I don't want to get out of bed and go to work and earn money. That's suffering, isn't it? I mean, don't you just want to stay there and sleep in till 11 o'clock in the morning, maybe? I had to get over that habit at an early age, man. You got to set that alarm. You got to get up. Got to face the day. And avoiding, that's suffering, but it's legitimate suffering. And avoiding that is going to end up causing more problems. I live in a big city that shall remain nameless, and I am very sad and disheartened to take my dogs for a walk, and I will see people that have set up little tents that they bought from their local, let's say Walmart or Target, and they're living in those tents. And if I look out my windows right now, I can see about 2 feet of snow. I'm not in the city I reside in. I happen to be somewhere else on a vacay. But these poor homeless people, my heart goes out to them. I do what I can for the homeless. I try to be balanced about that. But I also have a right to maintain a home for my family and keep food on the table. So that's a balancing act. But the subject is avoiding legitimate suffering, and that is possibly a worst case scenario. In the process of avoiding having to learn skills and go to work, you end up in the worst possible shape, which is not what you wanted in the first place. Moving on. Therefore, let us inculcate in ourselves and in our children the means of achieving mental and spiritual health. He's going to go into the tools. When we teach ourselves and our children discipline, we are teaching them and ourselves how to suffer and also how to grow. What are these tools, these techniques of suffering, these means of experiencing the pain of problems constructively that I call discipline? There are 4 of them. Delaying of gratification, acceptance of responsibility, dedication to truth, and balancing. And these things aren't really, he goes on to say, these things aren't really rocket science. They're fairly simple tools. But the main thing is to find the will within yourself to begin to learn these tools and putting them into practice. Therefore, after analyzing each of these tools, we shall in the next section examine the will to use them, which is love. So that's interesting. I never had looked at it that way before reading this book, and as I've journeyed through life and gone back and read this book many times, more and more stuff presents itself that I missed. This is reminding me that love is the way to the will to use these tools of discipline. Sorry. Getting old, folks. Delaying gratification. Not long ago, a 30-year-old financial analyst was complaining to me over a period of months about her tendency to procrastinate in her job. We had worked through her feelings about her employers and how they related to feelings about authority in general and to her parents specifically. We had examined her attitudes towards work and success and how these related to her marriage, her sexual identity, her desire to compete with her husband, her fears of such competition. Yet despite all this standard painstaking psychoanalytic work, she continued to procrastinate as much as ever. And, he had a solution that came to him intuitively, and I think it's very effective and beautiful, and it goes like this. Finally, one day, we dared to look at the obvious. Do you like cake? I asked her. She replied that she did. Which part of the cake do you like better? I went on. The cake or the frosting? Oh, the frosting, she responded enthusiastically. And how do you eat a piece of cake? I inquired, feeling that I must be the most inane psychiatrist that ever lived. And she replies, I eat the frosting first, of course. From her cake eating habits, we went on to examine her work habits, and as was to be expected, discovered that in any given workday, she would devote the first hour to the more gratifying half of her work, and the remaining 6 hours getting around to the objectionable remainder, probably the boring stuff, right? Or the difficult stuff. I suggested that if she were to force herself to accomplish the unpleasant part of her job during the first hour, she would then be free to enjoy the other 6. It seemed to me, I said, that 1 hour of pain followed by 6 of pleasure was preferable to 1 hour of pleasure followed by 6 of pain. She agreed, and being basically a person of strong will, she no longer procrastinates. So, I wonder if a lot of folks ever really learn these things. You would naturally learn them in childhood, and it's not outlined thoroughly and in black and white. Hey, discipline, you should do this and that. I think that really this is about getting past your own human nature and entropy to have a more effective life and less painful, right? And he basically, we're getting to the end of this chapter, and rather than read too much more of this, the basic tools were delaying gratification and then the acceptance of responsibility. What I did at an early age that helped me to get my head around this was I would always hear my parents talk about the word responsibility, and I just grew to hate that word. It just went in one ear and out the other. But then one day it dawned on me, let me break this word down a little bit. And responsibility means the ability to respond, right? And getting out of bed in the morning is the ability to respond to the situation of going out and making a living, earning some bucks and putting food on the table. And that applies to anything. Are you being skillful when you respond to your friends? Are you being skillful when you respond to your wife or a friend or a boss? The next tool was dedication to truth. And that's a little bit more difficult because he's going on to talk about how our parents and our school teachers and our friends, acquaintances, possible lovers, girlfriends, boyfriends, how they basically imprint on us and affect how we look at things. And the seed of our personalities and who we are begins with mom and dad and how skillful they are at parenting. And that's not a choice that we make. I'm not going to get into metaphysics here about predestination and all that. I will just simply say that it's pretty obvious that, our parents set the example and the tone of our lives. I will also go on to say that, we do inherit DNA and RNA, and we have genes, and, somehow our ancestors are giving us a platform for the development of ourselves as human beings. And of course, that's probably a series of videos. Being dedicated to truth is something that starts in childhood with parents who are possibly unskillful and imperfect, and they have unskillful and imperfect parents. And if you fall into the trap of just blaming your parents for everything that you've become and the big mess that you may call your life, you're just basically not facing and being responsible and accepting the truth that it's you that needs to do the work to make your life a better thing. And I see that in my family, my wife's children, some of my wife's children, I will say. Don't want to get in trouble here. Maybe you can see that in your friends. But most importantly, can you look in the mirror and look within yourself and see that within yourself? And I would call that being dedicated to truth. That's a little bit more difficult. And then the final one is balancing. And if you were to happen to go by your local courthouse, you may go inside, or you may see on the courthouse steps, there will be a statue there of Lady Justice, and she's holding a pair of scales. And obviously somebody does or does not commit a crime. And the courtroom drama is about finding the truth of what's happened and then, meting out the appropriate response to what a person hasn't done or has done. And this is represented by the symbol of Lady Justice wearing a blindfold and holding a pair of scales. And so you can see that these things do tie together. Somebody might join a religion and they will get a particular perspective and some dogma and some rhetoric, and they will only see that particular mindset from that group, the group concepts, the dogmas, and you discover it's not really balanced. You may discover with your friends and what you encounter in life that you will have political parties, and you will look. You may be in one, and you're looking at the other party and the people that belong to it, and you may see in them some imperfections, and you may see that they seem to be pretty one-sided about things, right? One-sided, not balanced. And really what's funny about that is typically if you can be a little bird and float up in the air 100 feet, look down at both parties or numerous parties, you will discover that they have a tendency to see the flaws and the one-sidedness in the other party, but somehow they have not been able to see some of the one-sidedness and dogmatism in their own political party. This could apply to religions, this could apply to politics, this could apply to groups of friends versus other groups of friends. I just bring this up to show you how important it is to balance. And that requires the ability to step back from a situation and to really genuinely try as hard as you might to be able to see both sides of the story before you make a decision. Maybe you go to some lengths to study issues and you try to learn about the candidates, or you try to learn about that religious leader or that guy that's speaking down at your local Rotary Club or Lions Club or whatever club it might be. Maybe you could do a little bit of homework and try to be balanced and informed before you just decide to take one position and one side of a situation. And I'm going to wrap up this chapter, but what's very interesting about the symbol of Lady Justice is to understand that even your human brain is made up of two sides. You have a left brain, you have a right brain, and you have a little communication network that goes between them, and it's called the corpus callosum. And that's how the two sides communicate with each other. And I think that they're intertwined in a lot of ways neurologically, but they are two separate lobes, and they claim in science that the left side is where your language and reasoning centers reside, and in the right brain is where more of your imaginative and emotional and symbolic structures reside. That would be another YouTube video, which I will hopefully get to if I could keep myself from tripping over my tongue. Well, this has been really enjoyable for me, and I hope that whoever might be listening to this will get something out of this and resonate with this. I highly recommend that you purchase this book, The Road Less Traveled. I can't say enough about it. And a lot of the videos that I would like to explore will be what I consider to be great men who are psychologists and possibly into spirituality too. And there is a word that I like to use, and it's called psychospiritual, meaning that psychology and spirituality, or understanding the meaning of life, it's not just psychology and it's not just spirituality, it's both. And you'll see that in modern day psychology, some schools of thought may take a practical approach and just completely discard spirituality, and there would be others that claim that Carl Jung and Jungian depth psychology is just a little bit too spiritual and cultish and, so to speak, woo-woo, right? But I think that with psychospirituality, you'll explore a good balance. Well, blessings to all of you, and I will see you on the next one.